Welcome back to the Woven Energy podcast on Real Practical Shamanism with me, Joseph Sikora, and Damon Smith. We are here with episode 38, I believe, and it's been a while. I think it's been about 2 months since we released our last episode. Be interesting to see how that one's gone down. But we had a lot of fun on that one, didn't we, Damon?
We did indeed. Yeah.
Well, you put me in my place.
One of us more than the other.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
who
genuinely
enjoyed it the least.
I enjoyed that episode a lot. It kind of like I don't know. It put a lot of things in place for me because I am guilty, as I'm sure a lot of people are, of approaching shamanism with that kind of mindset, with the must take drugs mindset. So it was a very interesting episode. And if you haven't listened to that one yet, guys, then do listen to that episode. It is one of the most practical, sort of down-to-earth, non-woo-woo episodes that we've done. Not that we do any woo-woo episodes, but hopefully you get what I mean by now. Episode
I'm
38.
glad to have it out the way, Joe, to be honest.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't have to talk again about it for a while.
We'll sprinkle it in now and again. We've got to keep people on their toes. So the episode we want to continue with, the episode we want to continue from, should I say, is episode 36, which was our first kind of practical episode on stage 3, which we've called the Spirit Dance. Can you, what's that called in Mongol again? What's the general term for stage 3 in Mongol?
So, it depends. So it depends what you mean, but Bobuchik is the spirit dance in Mongol. But do you remember what we've said is that that spirit dance is an example of stage 3 technique, right? It's not the kind of be all and end all of stage 3 technique. Does that make some sense? Because you could imagine other techniques done at the same level. I mean, for instance, booking Hengrig, you could definitely do that as a level 3 technique, and that would have nothing to do with spirit dance, but it would still be a level 3 technique. So but
booking Hengrig being the example we use for stage 2, right?
You can also use it for stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3, and if you really want to, all the way up to the neck down. Stage 7. But the point I'm trying to make is, I'm a spirit dance specialist, you could say, and so I have a lot to say about that. That is a
really important point, that though, isn't it? Yeah. Because we are conditioned to put things in boxes and go, well, I need a specific technique for stage 2, I need a specific technique for stage 3, and I think it's very important to recognise the overall spread and nuance that exists in all of these ideas.
Absolutely.
I get that all the time with the piano that I'm teaching. People want very specific things, and I'm like, this works, but if you want to get really good, then zoom out a little bit. Zoom out. See it all as a big picture.
Joe's Shamanic Piano Academy. Which is effectively
they found
what
me.
It is,
a few people who follow me on that have found the Woven Energy podcast. And I get a few messages. Oh, you're into shamanism, are you? So
isn't
that's
it
always an
clear
interesting conversation.
To me, it should be clear from your piano channel that you're into shamanism, even without mentioning it. It was immediately clear to me, anyway.
I've stolen a few ideas. Okay, so yes, with that out of the way, we've got a spread for all of these techniques, but we're talking about Bobuchik, which is the Mongolian term for spirit dance, which is one aspect of stage 3 of shamanism.
Yeah, it's also just one Mongolian term for spirit dance as well. We've said there's another widely used one, which is the Tam, which is leans towards esoteric Buddhism, but still the same thing, still spirit dance. So as we know, Mongolia was a joint shamanic and Buddhist culture, except that the particular flavor of Buddhism that was imported into Mongolia is Tibetan Buddhism, which is deeply steeped itself in shamanism. So effectively, Mongolia has native and imported strands of shamanism.
Yeah. And depending on where you look and how deep you look, there's strands of shamanism that exists in all sorts of regions and cultures, isn't there?
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so stage 3. Can you give a very brief, quick recap on where we got to with episode 36?
Yeah, well, I can't exactly remember what we covered and what we didn't cover. I think
we just started it, didn't we? It was a...
Yeah, my vague recollection is we sort of got to the point where we had a notion of practicing this in a grove-like area. And that we, as we all know, we need to have Chillicity in place while we're doing these things. And as we all know, we need to have Amskar in place, that sort of lightweight observational self that comes through Amskar practice. That needs to be in place. That's quite important for this stuff, because you need to be able to observe yourself without heavy baseline activity going on in your brain. And I think we were sort of talking about, as I recall, it's a long time ago now, and I haven't listened to it recently, we were talking about moving around the perimeter of the grove, around the outside of the grove, in a state of Chillicity. And that kind of shamanic walking in a state of Chillicity, incidentally, is called Alchach. I don't know if I mentioned that in the previous episode, but that's this Mongol name. And we are effectively just trying to get used to walking using the sort of lightweight observation of self gained through Amskar practice and keeping Chillicity on. We're not thinking as we're doing this, and just getting the ability to move around in the area that is your grove, if you like. And I don't know if we mentioned also, I think we did, we need a character of heaviness, like the muscles and the flesh are hanging on the bones of the skeleton, almost like the skeleton is a clothes hook and the rest of the body is just like some loose piece of clothing hanging on that. In Mongol, that's called ashgui. And so we have the alchach, the Chillicity-based walking, which incidentally isn't necessarily very fast. It can just be a normal walking pace. And so, think of that, the Bagtamste Saab combined into alchach. The heaviness quality will actually come. If your Chillicity is good enough and you just start that sort of walking around the grove, the heaviness comes quite easily. And I can't remember, but anyway, I recommend that at some point, once you've got used to this sort of walking, maintaining Chillicity, you should know when you're in the state of Chillicity by now. You should feel that. You should feel the thought just disappear, vanish from your being. It should be gone. And you're sort of hanging in that space where there is no thought as you're moving around. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to start winding back several episodes, getting back to is it 7, 8, and 9, the Chillicity episodes?
Yeah,
yeah, because we are
Chillicity episode that fit stage 1, 2, and 3 of Chillicity on there.
By civilized standards, we're now getting into fairly advanced stuff, and it's just going to wreck these episodes as we go on. If I have to keep going back over all of that stuff. You must have practiced the Chillicity stuff. It's not just enough to understand it and to have listened to it. You must have practiced and practiced and practiced. You must have practiced Amskar, practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. And now coming into the level 3 technique, if you've got that foundation, then you know what I'm talking about already. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then head back multiple episodes. You're not thinking, you're hanging in that space that is the Bagtamste Saab. Your ashgui is on, your alchach is flowing. And again, I don't know if we mentioned last time, but it's good to put your hands into the Teroch position as you're moving around your area, your grove. A stone circle for me. I'm kind of blessed with where I live. This is an amazing thing to do inside a stone circle. That's thousands and thousands of years old. It really is. But if you ain't got a stone circle, then then a clearing in a forest or just an area. But of course, you can practice it in your house, or wherever you are, wherever you've got a bit of space. The reason for the grove is mainly at level 3. It's mainly just there so that we don't have to have a huge, long, straight line where we can do this. We just go round and round. And this idea of elt, it's called in Mongol, the circling idea is a big deal in
elt.
Elt, it's called.
Elt.
Yeah, it's like the English word air, and then just put the letters LT. This isn't the official Romanization. This is Damon's Mongolian Romanization. Elt.
Just rewinding a sec. Tirolt is Tirolt. When you're talking about that position, is the hands down by the side, facing outwards, palms. It's the image, the Woven Energy podcast image.
The famous Woven Energy podcast image. That is the Tirolt position. A little bit less widespread than that when you're starting off. Yeah, that kind of width of spread that's in that image is what comes out when you're really moving through your spirit dance. This just, it's not like the sound of music. Yeah, if I'm doing this slowly, my hands, my arms, probably make a 90-degree angle between them only, not 180 degrees. Although you can, of course.
So there's something specific for you guys.
Yeah, and don't get a protractor.
90 degrees.
Somewhere between, let's get this right, somewhere between 70 degrees and 160 degrees. There you go. Rather than, let's say, 90, yeah. And it's the position that we used when we talked about, we talked about a tilling exercise ages ago. It's the same position. And that embrace position is, you're in the feeling in that is embracing nature. It's welcoming the outside world into you. This is possibly getting into level 4. It's the teabag in the ocean stuff, but again, don't imagine it. But you shouldn't feel when you're doing these type of techniques. Now, I'm going to hit you with a lot of Mongol today. I'm very sorry, but this sort of basic spirit dance, hukh arug, that's a word I use to describe a collection of base spirit dance techniques. So as we said, spirit dance is level 3, but it's not one technique, it's a whole bunch of them. If you think of foundational techniques, one term that can be used to describe a relatively, because, there's thousands of techniques in spirit dance. There's thousands, tens of thousands maybe. But there's sort of some foundational stuff, and it's not like a syllabus or anything, but stuff that tends to be fundamental, basic in the spirit dance space. Hukh arug.
So that's just a general term for entry-level.
The collection of stuff. So you could say that Tirilt's part of hukh arug, Havtas is part of hukh arug, Ashgri, the heaviness thing, that's part of hukh arug, Alchich, the walking, Bagtamshtesar, is part of hukh arug. These sort of foundational things. It's just a general term that can be used. It's a term that I like to use that can be used for like a bag of foundational spirit dance technique. Think of it like it's a toolbox, but it's not a huge toolbox with every last tool known to man. It's just like a bag with a hammer and a saw and, maybe a screwdriver and, basic stuff in there.
The basic stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm recommending is you just form the tail position as you're moving around. Yeah. And I think we talked about sucking the foot back when we want to turn and go the other way. What you find is the whole thing is about elt, really. It's all about circling. You're circling around the outside of the grove. When you suck the foot back, your body makes a circle. Your momentum makes a circle. And so what you find is the whole of spirit dance is very much about circles. And what I'd like to talk about is this idea of turning. When you start to learn this kind of thing, it appears to be turning around and going the other way to you. As you're, like a beginner's attitude towards spirit dance is, okay, now I've gone this way, I've walked around the grove this way, and now I need to turn around and go the other way. And so you get this concept of egach. There's another one. Another problem with huch arag is, just like the word arag, a lot of the foundational stuff, unfortunately, in Mongol starts with the word a. So you got elt, ashgui, alchach, egach, arag. Yes, only so. I apologize about that. There's nothing I can do about it. But there are a few others, like Havtas. It starts with an H, yeah. So
we should also point out that the reason why you're using all these terms is because English doesn't afford you the richness,
exactly,
in order to convey what these actually mean on a deep level.
We'd probably call them all the same word in English, the whole lot of them, Yeah. We could actually legitimately call each and every one of those things spirit if we wanted to, in terms of what their actual original Mongol meaning is. So I'm just thinking we could have a Mongol to English dictionary where we have hundreds of Mongol words that all translate as spirit. Yeah. So this idea of egach is quite important in spirit dance. It's not an idea really. It's a foundational pattern. It's like a change, right? So although we can, on a mundane level, we can call egach a change, a turnaround, or a change, but actually, it's more like an energy change. Although literally, in English, if I was to translate egach into English, I'd probably say turn around or turn. But actually, it's like an energy change. So what you're doing when you learn it in the basics is you just turn around. But this concept or this flavor of egach is a constant thing. Once you get into spirit dance, you're forever turning. But that doesn't mean you're turning around. It just means the energy is constantly changing. It's rolling over on itself. It's cycling around. It's twisting. It's moving up. It's moving down. It's forever turning in that sense. In terms of it's forever changing. And so this idea of egach is one I wanted to talk about. But how do we get there? How do we start to get that sense? Well, we need to start to practice getting a turn, getting this concept of egach, this concept's a really bad word. I don't know what to really call it. Technique. This technique of egach flowing. And how do we do that? Well, if we just do the same turn every time, like we talked about in the last one, that's never going to happen, because then we're just following set patterns, right? What we need to do is to start to introduce variety into the way that we are changing. And obviously we always have to come back to chillicity. So if we start chucking tons and tons of stuff in, that's just going to knacker the chillicity. It's not very good. So what we want to do is put variations of change into it that are very, very similar to each other, but they introduce they're similar to each other. That's important in order to keep the bag tamste sab on.
Keep the chillicity
on.
Purely because you don't want to be thinking about what you're doing.
But they're different enough for each other that we can start to get a flavor of egach. Yeah, so this is what we try to do. And so I guess one way you could do egach is simply, as you're walking, let's just call alchach. Let's just, rather than me saying chillicity-based walking, let's just take the word alchach to mean chillicity-based walking. It doesn't exactly, but let's just take that. So we've got alchach. We're moving around the grove. We can start to initiate egach by, for instance, using the inside foot. The inside foot being the one that's towards the center of your grove. And when we use the inside foot, as we're stepping it forwards, we can just start to turn. So say I'm circling, my left foot is my inside foot. As I'm stepping my left foot forwards, and say the center of the grove is on my left, then I start to turn the step. My left foot turns towards my right. So the left foot is turning away from the center of the grove. The very next step is with the right foot, And that next step is the same next step I was going to make if I was continued walking in a straight line. Except that what it does is it moves forwards and then out to the right. This is my right foot now. The one that's the outside foot is moving forwards and out to the right. And it makes a completely natural step around the other way. Remember, I've still got the tail position on. And then I just keep walking. So it's as if these two steps, the inside foot, which I'm imagining is my left foot, is stepping and turning towards my right. The left foot walks away from the center of the grove. And then the right foot in the very next step moves over to the right more, and then I'm walking in the other direction. But the key point is those two steps are no different from the steps I was using when I was moving forwards, from the alchach I was using when I was moving forwards. Does that make some kind of sense?
Yes, I'm just trying to imagine it.
Yeah, well, this is the reason for we need the grove, isn't it, mate? You know. So
yeah.
Actually, interestingly, I've been in that line. I've been putting together a kind of workshop, a kind of seminar, which I'm going to run somewhere, which is like an introduction to spirit dance. And it's this Hucharik. I'm probably not going to call it that or nobody will come. But basically, it's a seminar on Hucharik. And all I'm going to do is show this kind of stuff in that seminar. This very, very basic stuff. And obviously, a lot of the people who end up coming to it, I'm just going to advertise it on Eventbrite or something. I don't know where I'll run it. I'll probably run it. And it's only like 3 hours long or something like that. I might run it in Cambridge or somewhere like that. I'm going to show this stuff. I'll probably video it, and then I'll stick it in the grove. That's my idea.
That's the plan.
So basically, what I'm saying is you're alchaching. That's my word for chillisty walking. You're alchaching around the perimeter of your grove. I just made that word up. It's not Mongol. And you're in the Pteroth position. You've back Tamste Sabs on. Say you're circling. So what we would say is you're circling here anti-clockwise. Yeah. Your left foot is towards the center of the grove. Your left foot steps, instead of along the perimeter of the grove, it steps towards the outside of the grove. Your right foot, completely naturally, it's the step your right foot was going to make anyway, just keeps walking and it steps away and further around to the right, and then you just walk off the other way. And now I'm walking around the grove.
Let me describe this back to you. I'm walking around the grove. I'm going right foot, left foot. Right foot, now I want to do this turn. So my left foot, the center of the grove is on my left as I'm walking around the outside of the grove. My left foot turns to the right.
No, it just steps to the right. It doesn't turn, it just steps
to the right. Okay, so I don't, fine. So I don't turn my toes back or anything. I just step and cross over my right.
You turn your toes only in the same way you would if you were walking over to your right. This is all natural, right? This is all natural walking. Yeah.
Yep. So this shouldn't be a problem for people. I just want to make this really clear. So
definitely won't be a problem, because take as many steps as you need to turn around. So it definitely won't be a problem. This is just how you initiate. How many steps you need to go all the way around? You can take 10 if you want. You know.
So again, right, left, right. And then my left crosses over the right, just naturally. Toes might turn a little bit. And then my right foot just moves.
Just keeps walking.
However it would be normally. Just alchaching.
Off to your right. As if you're just the key part, the most
away
important
from the
thing.
Center of the circle. And then I just keep doing that until I've done a full circle.
Yeah,
not a full circle, sorry, a half circle. So I'm walking back the other way.
You've turned around and you're going the other way. It doesn't have to be exactly 180 degrees. In fact, if you're doing the exactly clinical turn every time, you will never get the idea of spirit dance, because that's absolutely the opposite of what it's about. Yeah, it's just the key point with these steps is they're supernatural. I don't mean supernatural as in, like unicorns. I mean, they are super pause natural. Yeah.
Got you.
And okay. And then you just keep going. You just keep going. Yeah. So that would be an egg. So would the sucking the foot back one. That would be an egg. But That's more of a technique to teach you something. You know, we said, you know, the really interesting thing with that type of agach is it's your weight's about to go on that foot and then suddenly it's sucked away. That's more like, that's a little bit amska, that technique. It's a little bit teaching you about changes that are going on inside your body, teaching you about balance, about energy changes in it. You know, I don't mean teaching on the baseline, you know what I mean? Midline and top line mostly. So that's more of a technique, but this is just like natural. It's just like natural, supernatural, super pros natural. Alchach all the way. So the alchach, Chelicity walking happens throughout this, yeah? And when you get used to it and you get a bit faster, you can turn tighter, but that's no difference than if you're in the street. So say, what I want you to imagine when you're doing this turn is that you see you're out in the street shopping and you see an interesting shop over straight ahead of you. And as you're walking towards it, you suddenly see an even more interesting shop off to your right. And it just so happens that your left foot is currently stepping forwards, yeah? That's it. That's it.
You're just instinctively guided by the second shop.
Exactly. And you don't want anything awkward. You don't want to do anything awkward with this stuff, yeah? So practice that kind of, and so you go in the other way and then you can do exactly the same thing coming back. What I would say is that you are always, you're always turning away from the center of the circle. Yeah, that's the point. Oh, it's not necessarily a circle. The grove can be peanut-shaped, almond-shaped, triangular. You're turning away from the center of the grove, yeah, basically.
Before you move on to something else, this might be going off on a tangent, I'm not sure, but a thought has popped into my head. And I'm wondering whether it relates to this state that you're trying to convey to people. So when you're learning a skill, you obviously you start out having to very much be in a thinking state about that skill, you know, and it's very much a technique based. Learn this technique, learn that technique, and then over time it all fits together. Right.
I kind of over the years I've come to sort of a point where, on a very technical level, I started to dispute that to myself. I had that idea myself for years, and I've started to think, at long last, it's perhaps not as true as it appears to be to everybody. But anyway, that's another podcast.
Yeah, well, that'd be interesting to get your take on that. But my point was, like, when you get to a certain stage with a skill, so for instance, I've experienced it with piano, I've experienced it in certain sports I used to play as a kid as well, but you have these you have these moments. So, for instance, I might be playing the piano and I might be completely in the zone with it. So I'm not even thinking about anything. I'm just playing. Right. And this magical moment happens where you create something and you go, and then you snap out and you go, oh, shit, that was good. Well, but it's gone. It's almost like a dream that's gone. But it's this sort of like...
right? It's guchach, yeah. Remember we said, bat toshaltin and guchach. Yeah, this is what we're after, mate. It's guchach that we want here. Yeah.
It's that completely lack of thought. You let the skill set that you've developed take over.
Exactly.
And it almost just forms a life of its own.
Yeah, that's true. And if you're learning the piano or something, that's true. But just how long have you been walking, Joe?
Yeah, that's my point. So like this kind of, but so equating the same thing. So because I would imagine with certain quote unquote hobbies that people have, if they've got to a certain stage with that hobby, they might have experienced something similar to that. So it'd be like,
yeah, exactly.
This hobby or certain things take on a life of its own. But it's that feeling that you want in this. Am I anywhere close to describing?
Yes, you are. Yes, but my point is, we're walking here, right?
Yeah.
So you've been walking since the age of what? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How much walking you've done in your life, Joe? You've got a fair old amount of guchach with your walking, I would imagine, by this point in your life, yeah? So what you want to do, this is what I was talking about, the naturalness of it. If you take advantage of that, if you take advantage of the fact that we have a lot of this stuff in us already, then sure you'll drift, as you're picking up the technique, you'll drift away from Chelicity a bit. You'll be dragged down to the baseline just through the natural process of learning something what you think is new. My point is if you take advantage of what you have learned already, your existing guchach, in your alchach, then you can get back to chillicity quite quickly. That's my point. Without too much practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And these techniques are good for that.
That's the advantage of turning in a very natural way rather than turning in some sort of forced kind of way, in a stylized way. So, for instance, the way you would get in the famous martial art of Bagwajang, those sort of stylized turns. Yeah. To become natural, those things have to be practiced an awful lot, right? But we're not talking about that here. We're just talking about turning around, right? Different ways to turn around in a natural kind of way. Much more like the kind of exploratory work that goes on, for instance, in the Feldenkrais method, which is just exploratory work with natural human movement.
I like how we've spent 30 minutes just talking about how to turn around.
We ain't finished yet. I think that's what we're going to do on this whole episode, and maybe the next one as well. But it's not just how to turn around. That's the point. You think that to start off with. The point is when you try these quote unquote different ways of turning around, and you start to absorb them all, and you get more and more layers of this self-same thing, which seem to be the boring old just naturally turning around, you will find that you don't see Egach as turning around anymore. You'll see it much less like turning around and more like energy change, an energy change in the weave. So the Guruch, So, but I'm just telling you what's going to come out of your practice, which probably isn't a good idea. I should let you practice, and then we'll talk about what's come out of your practice here. I don't mean you, Joe. I mean everybody listening. Yeah. So what's the next thing? Well, we build on what we know. Remember we said shamanism's like building layer on a strong foundation, which is chillicity. Well, we know Terel, but we also know Havtas, right? So as we initiate that, so once you practice that quite a lot, staying in the Terel position, the next thing to do is as you step away from the center, you turn your back towards the center of the grove. One of the things I like to think about in terms of this is a bonfire. This is wonderful stuff to do around a bonfire if you can organize it. You want to just imagine it's a very cold night and you want to warm your back. That's why you turn your back towards the center of the grove, is to warm it up on the bonfire. And just as you do that turn, you can bring your hands into the folded wings position, into the Havtas, and just don't imagine this, but it's as if as you're turning, you're striking the drum. Now remember this, yeah? Do you remember what we did in the Amskar techniques? When your breath changes, we strike the drum, or the drum is struck, yeah? This is exactly the same thing coming through into level 3, yeah? It happens. As you turn, as your body naturally turns, the drum is struck. You don't strike it, the drum is struck. Except if you haven't got a drum on your arm, you just go into Havtas position, right? Havtas position is just the drum striking position, yeah? So, and then as you step out, so that's as your left foot comes in, the drum is struck, you go into Havtas, and as you step out with your right foot, you separate back into Terel again, and then you keep going. So you're just adding that little transition, that little change, where you're striking the drum, and do it with a drum. Put your Shams drum on your left arm, and just do it if you want to do that. So if your Shams drum's on your left arm, when you're doing Terel, the inside of the drum will be facing slightly upwards to the sky, embracing the sky, if you like. As you step inwards naturally with your left foot in Egach, a version of Egach, the drum is naturally struck, and it's the transition within the energy, the transition within your body, the transition within the situation that is striking the drum. You're not hitting it, and this is a really, really important point. And this point is true even if you don't have the drum on your arm. You're not putting your arms into the Havtas position. The situation is precipitating that. The situation of your Amskar, the holistic Amskar within your system of your body, and the energy of the environment even, and the momentum of your body, and the change of the energy that's ongoing, the alchach that's ongoing, that causes the drum to be struck. You do not hit the drum. That's the point. Or it causes Havtas position to be formed. You do not form it. Does that make some kind of sense, what I'm hinting at there?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
And if you remember back to the exercise we're using when we hit the drum is struck on the change of the breath in Amskar. Do you remember that?
Yeah, now it's the change of energy.
Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing, the same feeling, the same essence. Identical going into Haftas. And whether you got the drum or not, it's the same thing. Yeah. And I hope everybody knows by now Haftas position. If you don't know what Haftas is, you're probably missing a few episodes. One of the things with the Woven Energy podcast, if you are a new listener, with our sister podcast, Heretics, you can jump in wherever you like. Unfortunately, with Woven Energy, that's not really very possible. So start from episode 1. And so the Haftas position is formed, and then you got this beautiful opening into a brace as you go around the other side of the grove. And you can also, sometimes it just feels nice, or it feels right. You know, as I say, as the spirit takes you, don't decide these things. Sometimes you just open right around straight into the center of the grove and go straight through the center of the grove, or go close to the center of the grove, wherever you want to go. One of the other things not to fight, and this is another thing that's completely different from learning martial arts, just the exact polar opposite. When you learn a lot of traditional martial arts, you are fighting with your natural movements to put yourself into certain positions. In shamanism, we want the exact opposite of that. There's no rules. There's no right and wrong. These are just techniques. The way to think about them is they're frameworks. Their frameworks are platforms of variation. If you feel like turning right into the center, or feel like going wherever, don't fight that feeling. That's great. That's the spirit trying to lead you. That's the spirit trying to teach you. Don't fight it. But also don't imagine it. Don't imagine that there's some little man behind your ear telling you to turn this way and that way. You know that's not right if you're doing that. If it's spontaneous, if there's no thought to it, and it's a change that just comes out, you alchach wherever you please. Yeah, in this technique. Yeah, just alchach wherever you please.
And being turning.
Alchach is Chilisty-based walking. Yeah,
Chilisty-based walking. Alchach.
Yeah,
right. Yep.
Yep. And so, the turning, which I've said doesn't really mean turning in spirit dance, but it does to beginners, and it doesn't mean anything. Generally, spirit dance beginners will view ergach, not alchach, ergach, as turning. Yeah. But once you get quite deeply steeped in spirit dance, that definition will make you cringe, because it's about change. It's not about turning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying there is you can go terelt as you turn, as the spirit takes you. And that's another thing in terms of deciding when to turn. Well, obviously, when you start off and you're trying to learn this, you'll be deciding when to turn. But it's ideal if you don't decide when to turn. So please don't decide. You want to get to the place where you're not deciding. The situation is deciding. The context is deciding. The amsker, in the biggest sense, is deciding. When you turn, you're not deciding. So I use this phrase. I use it again, as the spirit takes you. As the spirit takes you. That's when you turn.
Yeah, it's a good phrase, that.
Yeah. And eventually you'll find that the spirit takes you more and more often. And eventually you never stop ergaching. You may not turn all the time, but you never stop ergach. Once you get into spirit dance, everything is ergach. There's no stopping. So if you practice the Tillen exercise incidentally, if you have done that, you can also do that. So you can add a little thing out of that. So this idea of elt, which is the circling, like walking around the grove, alchaching around the grove. If you want to, as you turn that left foot in and you form the Haftas position, you can, if you're completely familiar with it, so do not attempt this unless you've practiced Tillen a hell of a lot. Otherwise, it will totally mess up your Chilisty. So I'm only talking to those people listening who've practiced Tillen a lot. Yeah. As you do that Haftas, that little circle out of the middle of Tillen, you might naturally feel that you start putting that in quite naturally because you're so familiar with the Tillen technique. If that's happening, don't fight that. That's great. And so what you find is that circle quite naturally leads you out beautifully into Terelt. So what I'm saying is Haftas has a circle, comes to have a circle within a circle. I do not recommend practicing this in this Alchach technique. I recommend practicing it in Tillin to the point where you don't even have to think about that little cycle. And probably you'll find as you start Egach and you're moving into Haftas, you'll find that little circle, the small circle within the big circle. You find that coming out anyway as you step out into Teirot again. Yeah. That would be a beautiful progression in terms of where you are moving, where you're going. And when moving in terms of the weave, in terms of the Guruch, that would be a beautiful progression. If it's coming out naturally, if it's coming out in a state of Chilisty, for goodness sake, don't fight that. For those people who've practiced Tillin a lot. If you haven't practiced Tillin, it's perfectly okay to do this without doing that. In fact, if you haven't practiced Tillin, it's probably very, very sensible to make sure that you don't do that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
but that is a nice idea as a next stage. But of course, like everything, you have to go back a stage to practice Tillin and then
I would hope that there's a few people who've been practicing Tillin. Yeah. We do have a lot of people listening to this podcast, so there's probably among them, there's a few people who have been, and they can probably try that immediately,
Good.
It's not really trying it. I think it's more like they'll find that happening. They probably won't have to try too hard. That's my point. So my real point was, if you're used to Tillin, you practice it quite a lot, and you find that happening, don't fight that. That's a good thing. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the question is, so that's turning it away from the center of the circle. So now, what if we want to turn in?
Which was my next question.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So this is where we get a thing called Nochro Egach. And it's not exactly the same. We're moving around the circle. Let's say we're going anti-clockwise. So you could do the mirror image going clockwise or anti-clockwise, doesn't matter. But let's stick, because we've been describing going anti-clockwise, let's stick with that. So left foot's on the inside of the circle.
Yeah.
And so we're moving along in that way. As we move, we step forwards quite naturally. And because we're going around the circle, that foot is still going that way, right? It's still moving in that way. Yeah. So as we're stepping, we just keep stepping in that way, and then it's as the left foot steps. As the left foot steps, the left foot turns out towards the center of the circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And here, whether or not here you do make Havtas at this position, yeah? So going the other way, it's entirely optional, right? But this way, you definitely want to make Havtas here. You come in, and so what I'm saying is you step just naturally with your right foot, and then as your left foot steps, you step around to your left with your left foot, and you make Havtas. Don't just leave Tirok there. You make Havtas. And then you step out with your left foot as if nothing's happened. So basically what you want your left foot to feel as you're doing this movement, you want your left foot to feel completely weightless early in this movement. And so what I mean is you make that Havtas, you've got your ashqui on, and all that heaviness is going down through the right foot. And the left foot is free. A big mistake that people make in turning the other way is the left foot is caught up on the ground because they think, oh, now I'm turning. When they were doing Alchach in a straight line, that left foot was free. But because they're thinking, oh, now I'm turning, the left foot's got to do something, it's got to turn into the center. For whatever reason, the left foot tends to get caught up, what I call it, the left foot gets tangled in the baseline. You don't want that. Don't let your left foot get tangled in the baseline. Your left foot wants to stay on the midline, wants to stay in that manifest realm. And so what I'm saying is your left foot just steps completely naturally. Now, this is a bit harder than turning the other way. people find it more difficult turning in than turning out. And you just want that to be a completely natural step. You definitely want to make Haftas here, and then you step out into Tiralt again. And what you'll find again, if you practice Tillen, you'll find that little circle coming again. Just as I said before, it's really, really important. It's really, really important to let that little circle happen, the little Tillen circle, let it happen. Because that's a really beautiful addition, really useful addition to your radar.
Remember what we're trying to do? It's another cycle.
Yeah. But remember what we're trying to do is make a quite complex weave through this stuff. So it's a radar for nature, because the next few levels we start interacting with that weave with the weave of the environment. But just at this level, we're just adding movement. And so then we come out and we separate back into Tiralt. And then we're going the other way. It's just the same. So my point is the two turns are very similar. But what I find is, for a lot of people trying to pick this up, not that a lot of people do try to pick this up, but quite, what I mean by that is that it's a common mistake. When you're turning away from the center of the grove, the right foot tends, if you're going anti-clockwise, if you're going the other way, it's the other feet, yeah, but if you're going anti-clockwise, the right foot doesn't necessarily get caught up very much. But when you're going the same way, anti-clockwise, and you try the turn in, you'll find the left foot gets caught up, gets tangled, not just on the ground, but in the baseline of your mind. And this requires a lot of practice to get rid of that. And the way to get rid of it is to do Haftas. Don't try to do that just holding Tiralt. It won't work very nicely, at least not to begin with. And you want your left foot to feel free as a bird. Yeah.
As soon as the right foot comes down with that heaviness, the left foot's turning.
Left foot's free, just like it was walking straight ahead, except it's not walking straight ahead, it's turning back the other way. Yeah.
It's turning back the other way into the middle of the circle.
It could do if you want to, but I mean back the other way from where you came from, like a 180-ish degree turn, yeah.
Okay. So we're not actually doing a turn like we were with the other one. When we're turning to the right, we're actually doing a turn, quote unquote.
We're not doing it. We're not doing a turn in either case. We're doing an ergach in both cases.
You know what I mean? Just bear with me, sure. Right? As I try and get my head around this. So, we're ergaching to the right when we're going anti-clockwise around the circle. When we're doing our quote unquote turn to the outside of the grove, we are actually turning around. The left foot almost crosses over the right, and then the right naturally keeps it going, and we turn around and we go the other way.
That's right. Yeah.
With the left, if we're turning in, there isn't a turn. Yes. It's like it almost skips backwards. We're just doing a 180 and it turns back with the Haftas.
180-ish. Yeah. But if you want to, if the spread takes you and you want to go straight into the center of the grove, why not? Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we could do the same with the right foot instead of the left, right? And so if we're turning, so we could instead of doing the quote unquote turn on the outside, we could do the turn on the inside, but we just use the right foot instead of the left, and then we do a.
Sure.
Have I lost you? I've lost you. I've lost myself.
That's fine, mate.
We need the grove, mate. We need the grove.
We do indeed. So, like I say, this
is one of those episodes I think we're going to have to.
That I'm putting together will make everything quite clear quite quickly. Yeah. The grove has actually come on quite a lot in terms of the technology behind it now. The platform is basically there. There's one of our founder patrons is in there at the moment, and I still need to get passwords for the patrons area out to other patrons. And I'm doing that in order, basically. But basically, we want to do this stuff in as natural a way as possible. And I think that it really, there's a strong desire to see a video of it. But in some ways, a video won't show you in some ways it will. If you understand all of this stuff, if you got your pagoda, if you got your Chalisti in place, you've got your Amsker in place, and you've got your Ashqui in place, which I have done a little video on, and that is already in the patrons area on the Grove. But I want to do a better video on that. You've got your, I think it might be on Patreon as well, I'm not too sure. You've got your Alchach going. When you move into Egach going both ways, you keep that natural. My point is, if you just saw a video of somebody doing that who could do it in a shamanic way, it wouldn't teach you to do that because it's all visual stuff and all you don't see all of that stuff that's behind it. You don't see the heart of the technique. Yeah. It's still a Chalisti technique. It's still an Amsker technique that you're doing here, and it's more about the change of the energy and the physical movements. If you concentrate them on those too strongly, you end up doing ordinary dancing, not spirit dance. And this is really, really important to get, not just for these ones we're talking about now, but across the board. If you start thinking about these things as set patterns of movement, set moves, you will move further away from spirit dance, not closer to it. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, have the attitude that if it's not exactly right, it doesn't matter as long as it's coming out of a strong foundation of Chalisti, of a really, really good grasp of Amsker, with the Ashqui in place, and the Alchach is true Chalisti-based Alchach. It's not just ordinary walking. Then the Egach coming out of that will be correct, even if you don't, quote unquote, make the dance step in the way that Uncle Damon says you should. Do you follow what I mean? This is about self-learning.
What feels natural to you?
No, that's a bad one. Don't say that. Don't say that. Because what can feel natural to you can also... You remember we talked about the two different parts of intuition, yeah? And so that's my worry about that phrase. You're sort of right, but there's always two parts of what feels natural to you. There's what feels natural to you that is actually natural. There's what feels natural that is the real part of you. And then there's what feels natural to you because of the miasma, yeah? Because
so
you
where
think
the
it
spirit
feels
takes
natural.
You.
Where the spirit takes you, absolutely, is the best way. And if you're not deciding, that's the best place to be in. These things happen, you don't make them happen. And, if it doesn't happen, and you're just practicing your Alchach and Egach doesn't happen very often, then don't do it. Just there's nothing wrong with practicing Chalisti with Alchach in a beautiful grove out in the countryside. I'd just keep doing Alchach all day long, round and round the grove. I have a wonderful, wonderful time, and there might not be a single 180-degree turn anywhere in evidence. So we're just talking about how do we make our radar rich here. But it always has to be spontaneous. If there's nothing driving it, if there's nothing behind it, then don't do it. Yeah, that's how spirit dance works.
Yeah, and remember, there's no. I haven't turned for a while. I better turn. Now.
Exactly. That's like the worst thing you could possibly think. I haven't turned for a while. Oh dear. That's like that's miasma central. Yeah, or you feel like you ought to be turning or something. No, you don't feel like turning. Don't turn. So that's basically how to do Egach away from the center of the grove and towards the center of the grove, turning the two ways. Yeah, out of Alchach, Chalisti-based walking. But it's the distinction. Just to be clear, it's the distinction between ordinary dance and spirit dance is not where your feet are stepping. It's not where your movements are going. It's not whether you're in the perfectly beautiful tail position. There's not a panel of judges judging whether your fingers at the correct height in relation to your ears, or even that your head's up straight and your back straight and stuff like that. There is no panel of judges. Yeah, this is spirit dance. This is not ballroom dancing. Yeah, remember one of the things I said, if you want to see the exact polar opposite of spirit dance, ballroom dancing is what you should have a look at. Have a look at a real high-level ballroom dancing competition. especially the silly smile that's plastered on their faces. That smile is the 180-degree opposite of spirit dance, yeah. So I mean, I want to get into more ergachs. So I think that's a good for this one.
Yep.
That's definitely 55 minutes. So we've done normal ergach. Next time we're going to do nochro ergach, bach, gai ergach, haratze ergach. Yeah, we're going to do all kind of ergach next time. But just to get a general introduction to ergach, you could say that's what we've introduced in this particular episode.
Oh, guys, I really hope that this is making sense to you. I really do. There's a lot of Mongolian.
We can always go back over it.
Yeah, definitely. I think.
But you know why? Just on that point, you know why I'm using Mongol words, don't you?
It's necessary.
If I use English words, honestly, it will take you 3 times as long to learn this. If I use English words, because you'll think you know what I'm saying, and you'll be wrong.
Yeah. You want to use the term, and people understand what that means on a deeper level, rather than having to explain it all in English.
I'd rather use a term that they don't bother about trying to understand what it means. Because if that understanding is on the baseline, if they want to understand it on a deeper level on the midline, where it's correct to understand spirit dance, then and then the top line, then that's fine. Because remember, this is all about the top line, this stuff. The top line, the midline. The baseline, who cares? Yeah, I really don't care. And that's my worry. If I start using English words, that these English words are not direct translations of the Mongol words, but B, Mongol's a much better language for talking about shamanism than English is. Just far better language.
And also, hopefully people will have listened, hopefully you guys will have listened to this episode anyway, because remember, this podcast is, you got to listen to it in order. But I think it was episode 6. It was either 5 or 6 where we talked about the word spirit, and on the subject of using Mongol, that was a really good episode. I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. It was all about
that's probably a good one to go back and listen to. That's
even if you have listened to it, go back and listen to it again.
That's one of my favourites as well. It gives you it really explains quite well the problem with English.
Yeah. All right, cracking. So next episode we will be continuing from this one. We'll do another episode on the Ashkun. Ergach.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to do a few episodes, I think, on the Hucharg.
We're getting deep into stage 3 now, so that's good.
I wouldn't say we're getting deep into it, but we're
getting started. We're scratching the surface.
Past the paddling pool.
Speaking of English, it's like every time I say something, it's like, but Joseph.
Yeah, exactly. I know it is a problem.
Man. It's so difficult.
Not you, man. It is super difficult, and that's why I give up. You know, there are other languages I could have used. The Siberian languages are also good for talking about this stuff, but I studied Mongol, and that's the one I've polarized towards. That I know Japanese equivalents for all of these things. Pretty much all of them.
It's just the case. It's just the case that English is not a shamanic language. It didn't do.
But my point there is that Japanese is like a halfway house. It's better than English, but it's still nowhere near as good as Mongol. So, I find Mongols really, really good in that it has a shamanic flavour that permeates the language. And it's not surprising. There were shamans. They're shamans to this day, those people. Even when they were communists, they were just shamans pretending to be communists, So it's like, it's in their nature. It's in their bones. They don't go around thinking they're shamans. They just are. Or they're just, animists. They just are. And that's reflected in their language, and it is a really great language for talking about that stuff. If you have to put it into words, but remember, all these words are all off the baseline, even in Mongol. Yeah, and what I'd really like you to understand is start to understand this stuff through your practice, and not on the baseline, not analyzing your practice. Through your practice, it goes into your midline, into your top line. It goes into your ideally, it goes direct into your gukuch. Bypasses your cerebral cortex entirely, goes straight into your limbic system. Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we're done. Another good episode, and
we'll continue this in the next episode. Guys, if you, few things, if you go to wovenenergy.com/start-here, you can grab your Get Started episode where I prod Damon a bit and try and get some interesting nuggets out of him. You can also head to Patreon, support us on Patreon. Damon, what's the address for that? Patreon.com/wovenenergy. Just wovenenergy?
Yeah, all one word. Wovenenergy, yeah.
Yep, so you can donate a variety of... There's a bunch of options on there, isn't there, and various perks. So if you want to help us out, you can go and support us over on Patreon. You can also give our podcast a nice review on iTunes. We like 5-star reviews over here, but of course, it's entirely up to you. It always helps us rank and, gets us in front of more people. So that would really help us out. Thanks a lot, guys.
Wait a minute, Joe. You've just reminded me of something.
Yep.
I think we've had some new patrons.
Oh, right.
So we should probably thank them. And I think that would be good. And now what I'm worried about is that we're actually going to miss somebody out here. So because it's such a long time since we've... I'm going to check this afterwards. It's such a long time since we've done a
introduce that next episode? We'll do that on the next episode.
Okay, so guys that have become patrons recently, thanks ever so much. We traditionally do this at the start of the episode. The next one will come out soon. It'll be a continuation of this one. We will thank you, wonderful people, very, very shortly. You know who you are, and I cannot tell you how much that is appreciated. To be honest, we would have stopped. To be honest, if it wasn't for our patrons, we certainly would have stopped these podcasts. That would have happened in very recent times. So it's you that's kept us going, and it's you that's making all this happen. So thanks ever so much.
Cracking. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next episode.
Thanks a lot. Bye.